Hi, my name is Ahmetoglu, and I'm based in Goldsmiths, University of London, where I do my PhD research. And the PhD research is on the entrepreneurial individual. Well, the name of the talk is the entrepreneurial individual. I do research on basically entrepreneurship, and it's looking at the psychology of entrepreneurship on the individual level of analysis. Now, I don't have an introductory joke necessarily, but I do have a quick exercise, and I would just like you to think of an entrepreneur. So what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of an entrepreneur? Or who is the first one that comes to mind when you think of an entrepreneur? Okay? Perhaps it is one of these guys. Often people think, in terms of persons, maybe these guys, but also in terms of what comes to mind. It can be ambition, it can be money, and it can be success. These are sort of common things that come to mind when people think of entrepreneurs. Now, I just want you to keep that in mind, and I'll come back to this in a bit. Now, the agenda today is I will talk about problems in entrepreneurship research, because I do believe that there are problems in entrepreneurship research. There are very few facts and very few established frameworks to work with. I will quickly go through what I think the main problem is, and then I will suggest a new perspective of how we should look at entrepreneurship, and also a new construct for entrepreneurship research, along with a method to assess it. So it will be a bit of a fast forward bit on the theoretical side, but I'm happy to take any questions afterwards as well. Okay, so entrepreneurship is obviously key on the agenda. It has been historically as well, but now with the economic situation, obviously even more so. It's very sort of prominent in the UK and the US, but also globally, and it's perhaps not surprising since it's thought to be a major source of economic and social progress. Okay, it's been studied on different levels of analysis, on the organizational level, national level, and the international level, but probably the most common sort of research analysis, or the level of which we have studied entrepreneurship, is on the individual level. People are interested in the change agents involved in entrepreneurship. So sometimes they are called change agents, but obviously the agents that lead to entrepreneurial activity. So what is it about these change agents that differentiates them from the rest? This is the general sort of question. What is so special about these change agents? What is it that differentiates them from the rest? So the main question would be, what is it, the psychology of these change agents? Okay, so these are the main questions that we're asking. It seems straightforward, and despite research since the 70s now, we still don't have a clear answer or a satisfactory answer to this question. In the late 80s and 90s, the reviewers of the literature found few significant results in terms of the psychological characteristics that are involved in entrepreneurship. And this led Aldrich and others to conclude that research on personal traits seems to have reached an empirical dead end. Since then, some methodological improvements have been made to research, but still the conclusion is quite similar. This is from the journal Applied Psychology, Aldrich concluding that there is a disagreement in the literature as to whether personality is a useful construct in entrepreneurship research. Similarly, from the latest PSYOP edition for the psychology of entrepreneurship, also concluding that the psychological factors and relationships that play a role in successful entrepreneurship are not clear. Now, this obviously means that we have very little to go on in terms of understanding the psychology of change agents. So we still don't know very much about this, and we can't go to governments, we can't go to businesses with this. So the question obviously is, what is the problem? Still, there is a lot of suggestion about this being a methodological issue, but I think the problem is more fundamental. I think it's a theoretical one, and I think a conceptual error has been made with the term entrepreneur and entrepreneurship, which has led to the fact that we are asking the wrong questions and employing erroneous research designs, okay, to find out. So it's not just about the definition, it's how we operationalize and how we conceptualize this term. And there are two most common definitions currently. I'll just take some water here. It's okay. and that is of entrepreneur as a business owner and founder, and the other is entrepreneur, a business owner, founder with particular personality traits, intention, etc. And the research design carrying on from this usually is basically taking entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs and see what the difference is. And in this way, we will find out what psychology of change agents is. But I think there's a major flaw in this research design, okay? And I don't think it can tell us much about the psychology of change agents. And this is, if we look at it a bit more carefully, if we define entrepreneur as a business owner only, we quickly realize that this is a highly heterogeneous group. We're trying to get a common profile of a group of individuals where differences between individuals within the group are very large. Okay, 40% of people this is US data, will be self-employed at one time. This is higher in other countries as well. Now, are all these people change agents, and is it even worth trying to find an average profile of 40 or 50% of the population? Now, even despite this as well, 70% will fail within 10 years. So the people, most of the people in the target group will, by definition, belong to the comparison group after 5 to 10 years. There's no wonder we can't get any significant differences there. Now, another way to define it is also looking at entrepreneur. People say, okay, entrepreneurs aren't just business owners, they are more than that. So we need to look at people that have certain intentions or personality characteristics. So this is Carland's definition, which says it's a founder, owner, and a manager of a business whose principal purpose is profitable growth. So this is what an entrepreneur is, and we are saying that they have certain intentions, and this is as opposed to people that have purposes of personal goals to sort of support themselves or their family. So that would be the distinction between entrepreneur. But if we look at it in terms of intentions or personality, first the intentions change. I might start with an intention to support my family or myself and go into a growth intention to grow my business. And that would mean I could go in and out of being an entrepreneur. That would mean that entrepreneurs is not a stable concept and could therefore not have stable predictors such as personality and intelligence, for instance. The second one, if we presumably take it as a stable personality trait, which they mean as in purposes are something more stable like ambition, then still difficult to justify to what degree one should have this personality characteristic. So to what degree should I have ambition or extraversion or conscientiousness to be considered an entrepreneur? It would be like saying you're only a psychologist if you score 75 or above on neuroticism, or you're only an engineer if you score 80 or above on conscientiousness. I mean, this is clearly a social construction, but it also leads to the fact that we can't sample entrepreneurs because everyone will have their own idea of to what degree they should possess a certain personality trait to be considered an entrepreneur. So I think the bottom line is we haven't captured the psychology of change agents because we have made a conceptual error with the term entrepreneur, which has led to us asking the wrong questions, and we have not asked some important questions. Now, I think we can, where does that leave us in a way? I mean, I think we can find out about the psychology of change agents, but we need to look at it from a different perspective. There's one perspective that is in line with the actual origins and the meaning of the term entrepreneur and entrepreneurship, and in line with psychological theory, with the theory of individual differences. So if we look at the origins of entrepreneurship, what exactly is it? It comes from Latin and French roots, which from the word entreprendre, which means to undertake a serious activity, a serious project or activity. The term entrepreneur came to be used in the 17th or 18th century to refer to individuals who were quite venturesome and who were quite opportunistic and found new and better ways of creating value and making profit. Okay, and if we think about it today, this is how we generally refer to someone who is entrepreneurial. Someone who is entrepreneurial is usually someone who is venturesome, someone who is opportunistic, and finds new ways of creating profit, for instance. Now, it was formally introduced by two economists, Jean-Baptiste Say and Schumpeter, who said that entrepreneurs create value, stimulate economic progress, and by finding new and better ways of doing things, by innovating, and by recognizing and exploiting opportunities. Now, you can write this in many different ways. You can say new product entry or new services or new methods of production, but all these terms will fall under same umbrella terms or same underlying factors, which is basically the recognition and exploitation of opportunity, innovation to create value and progress, okay? Now, many contemporary writers will also agree that this is the essence of entrepreneurship, but it's operationalized very differently. Now, if we look at entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial activity in this way, we realize two things. First, business creation isn't the essence of entrepreneurship. You can innovate, you can recognize and exploit opportunities without creating a business. Even though you can do it through creating a business as well, it's not essential. Second, this activity isn't exclusive to a particular group. In essence, anyone can recognize opportunity, can exploit an opportunity, anyone can innovate or create value. We will just differ in the tendency and the ability to do so, to the degree we do so. So how frequently we do it and how well we do it, okay? So this is very much in line with individual differences perspectives. So how people do not differ in terms of whether they're entrepreneurs or non-entrepreneurs, but whether they are more or less entrepreneurial. Now, you can be a psychologist, a sports person, a farmer, whatever it is, and your status isn't very important, it's your behavioral tendencies that are the indicators. Now, I think realizing this also, this is, I think, consistent with individual differences perspective, but also the only theoretically consistent way we can move forward in research, okay? And if we look at it in this sense, we also realize that we have failed to capture an important concept for entrepreneurship research, but also individual differences research, and that is how entrepreneurial a person is. We don't currently measure that. And I think it is because we have been asking the wrong questions in research, and I think we need to start asking the right questions. We haven't been asking some important ones. Okay, this is, what is the entrepreneurial dimension? What is the structure of entrepreneurship? What do we mean when we say someone is entrepreneurial? Okay, so we're talking about the structure and the assessment. How do we assess this? Why are some people more entrepreneurial than others? So looking at the causes, genetic or environmental, and then what are the consequences of entrepreneurial behavior? So what do they lead, what do entrepreneurial people do? What do they lead to economically or socially? We hypothesize that they increase, that they lead to economic progress, but we have never actually tested this since we have not measured whether someone is entrepreneurial or not. Now, based on this framework, the practical side of my PhD research has been to obviously first design a measure of this construct. So it's the measure of entrepreneurial tendencies and abilities. It basically measures how entrepreneurial a person is, okay? And the four facets here that it has is based on the prominent themes in the literature that tells us what the essence of being entrepreneurial is. So it measures your tendency and ability to perceive opportunities. It measures your tendency and ability to exploit opportunity, your tendency and ability to innovate, and your tendency and ability to create value. Okay, so these are the four facets that the concept is comprised of. It's a 61-item measure. It is a 5-point Likert scale. It gives you four facets, as I said, and one total score. Now, we have conducted research both on and offline, mostly online because we can give instant feedback to participants and we can reach a wider audience and more quickly. Okay. Now, what the first thing we do is when participants join this test is we ask them for behavioral or biographical data, so current status and past behavior. And this would be things like whether they are self-employed and what their income is currently. Income is quite important as it is a good measure of success or value created both within and outside business. Then we have self-employed or business owner. This is the sort of traditional way of measuring entrepreneurship. But I think, like I said before, I don't think that's necessarily a single act isn't necessarily a good indicator of entrepreneurship. It's a behavioral tendency. So we also ask how many businesses have you created. So the idea here being, if you are more entrepreneurial, you want to exploit more opportunities, you want to innovate more, you are more likely to create more businesses. And we also ask how many businesses people currently operate, for instance, and this is a key indicator in entrepreneurship research. Since 70% of them fail, it would be a good indicator of success. Finally, we have how many employees does the organization employ. Another very sort of strong indicator of success in entrepreneurship research. We also ask other outcomes outside businesses. As I said, we have both inside and outside business, and also entrepreneurial activity within organizations. So have you solved a long-standing organizational problem, brought in new business within your organization, etc. So this is corporate entrepreneurship. The four facets that we would give them, this is just some sample items. So I generally, first to see commercial opportunity would be entrepreneurial awareness. You would have, I try to take advantage of profitable opportunity, being opportunism, and the two others being entrepreneurial creativity and vision. Okay, I have to move forward a bit faster now. So in terms of the results so far, we have found good psychometric properties over 6 studies. Generally, we find 4 facets and 1 general factor, all with good reliabilities. In terms of its trait correlates, we find that it correlates moderately with openness and extroversion, and modesty with conscientiousness and neuroticism, and doesn't correlate with IQ. Okay. In terms of its validity so far, we have found that this was the first 2 studies where we found that it predicts income better than many psychological constructs such as IQ, Big Five, creativity, psychopathology, and Machiavellianism, etc. This was a small sample and quite selected sample, so we had to look at it with larger samples and other constructs. So we looked at it with the Big Five. This is the long measure of the Big Five, and we found that although extroversion and age predicted income, the meta was a better predictor than the Big Five facets. In terms of IQ didn't predict income, but meta did, and it was a stronger predictor of age as well. We have recently conducted a study with examining in relation to Holland's typology, the RIASEC, and we gathered that it would be quite similar to the concept of enterprising, so we wanted to see the relationship there. And as we expected, enterprising was the only predictor of income in the RIASEC model, but when we included it in a regression model, when we included meta in a regression model, we found that meta was the only significant predictor. That is, it explained most of the variance that enterprising aspect was accounting for. We also looked at it in terms of businesses created. Again, meta was the strongest predictor there over the Big Five, over IQ, and over RIASEC. Again, looking at it in terms of currently operating, businesses currently operating, meta, again, the stronger predictor than IQ and the RIASEC. We had only 1 study on number of employees, and again, meta was the only significant predictor there apart from age. I'll pass through this one. So far we have found quite promising results. Meta is correlated with personality factors. It is not correlated with ability factors. It predicts entrepreneurial outcomes better than established personality and IQ and creativity measures. And it accounts for most of the personality variance in entrepreneurship. Now, obviously, we need to be, this is early stages, so we need to be careful with our conclusions, and there are still things to look into, whether it predicts incremental variance beyond other personality measures and in different settings and with objective measures. But overall, the results have been quite positive. So, to summarize, I think we have failed to capture the psychology of change agents because of a conceptual error in research. I don't think status is a very important thing. More importantly is the behavioral tendency. Entrepreneurship is a normally distributed disposition which is likely to be highly important. And this is sort of confirmed with initial results of the meta constructs. If you score higher on meta, you're more likely to create value. and in income and other sort of value creation. I think, to conclude, I think being an entrepreneur is not necessarily the only thing you need to succeed or to be a change agent, but I think it is the essence of being a change agent. I think it is what is the difference between just being successful by hard work and being successful by finding new and better ways of doing things. It's what differentiates evolutionary or incremental change from radical or revolutionary change. Okay, so I think if we are able to capture or measure this concept, and if we're able to select individuals based on this concept, we will be in a good way to, in a strong position to create value. And I think this is quite important for both organizations and governments and individuals.